Hey guys, tonight we wake up in a bed that smells like hay, sweat, and a hint of damp wool. Your eyes blink open to a sliver of morning light cutting through a wooden shutter that doesn't quite close. The bed you're in feels like a sack of old potatoes, and your back definitely thinks you've been flattened by a cart. There's something crawling, possibly a flea, possibly your imagination, across your ankle. And no, you didn't survive a wild night out or fall asleep during a documentary. You've somehow woken up in 14th century England. Specifically, in a merchant's garret tucked above a shop that smells of salted fish, ale, and mild despair. Your name? You're not sure yet. Your job? Apparently, you sell goods, although what that means will become painfully clear later. And your hygiene level? Let's just say people in this era consider 2 baths a year extravagant. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up, and the ceiling immediately introduces itself to your forehead, low and unforgiving. Rubbing your head, you swing your feet over the side of the bed and feel the crunch of straw on the floor. You're wearing a woolen nightshirt that's coarse enough to exfoliate your soul, and outside your one tiny window, a rooster is screaming like he's being paid to annoy you. Welcome to your new life. You shuffle toward a chipped basin of water and splash your face. The water's cold, of course, it's always cold. You sniff your armpits and decide society will just have to cope. Throwing on a rough tunic, a belt with a pewter buckle, and hose that sag tragically around your knees, you realize you're missing shoes. You find them under the bed. They are, how do we say this, more holes than leather. As you head downstairs, the stairs creak like they're auditioning for a haunted house. You emerge into your tiny shop, which is attached to your living quarters. There's a counter made of cracked oak, a few shelves of threadbare cloth and pickled turnips, and a sign outside with a faded picture of, is that a goat? Or a poorly drawn merchant? Historians still argue whether small-town signage actually mattered or if people just navigated by smell. You unlock the door and step out into the crisp morning air of the town. Cobbled streets stretch unevenly before you, lined with timber-framed buildings leaning at slightly worrying angles. The town is already alive, smoke rising from chimneys, children darting between stalls, and somewhere, someone arguing about onions. A man pushes past you dragging a cart of fish that's seen better weeks. He mutters something about lazy merchants, and you just blink at him. You feel the distinct sensation of being both underdressed and overdressed for everything. A woman nearby is yelling about eggs. You don't see any eggs. You lock eyes with another merchant. He nods in that way men nod when they share the same bleak reality of inventory spreadsheets and customer complaints, except in this case, it's all just scribbled parchment and being yelled at in Middle English. You try to recall what you're supposed to sell. Your shelf has cloth remnants, some dried herbs, 2 pewter spoons, and a jar of something jelly-like that might be for eating. Or medicine. Possibly both. You place these on the counter, straighten your back, and practice your best smile. It's not pretty. But hey, at least your stall isn't next to the tanner's, whose shop smells like a mix of death, wet dogs, and economic necessity. As the street fills up, a town crier walks by, ringing a bell and shouting news. Something about the wool tax being adjusted and someone's pig going missing. Riveting stuff. Fun fact. Town criers had legal immunity for what they said while crying. Meaning they could technically shout, "The king smells of garlic," and be fine. Legally. Not socially. A woman stops by your stall and points at your cloth. You panic and say, 3 groats. She frowns. That's highway robbery, she snaps. You're not sure what a groat is, honestly. She haggles, you sweat, and somehow you end up exchanging the cloth for 2 wrinkled apples and a promise that her cousin might buy spoons. Welcome to retail. By midday, the sun filters through the soot-stained sky. You're hungry, but eating your own wares feels like a slippery slope. A child runs past and nearly knocks over your display, and someone sneezes violently behind you. You make a mental note to stand upwind from the alehouse. And just when you're starting to feel confident, like you've got a handle on this merchant gig, your stomach growls, your feet ache, and a man with an official-looking pouch starts walking directly toward you. He has a ledger. You have anxiety. But that's tomorrow's problem. For now, you lean against your stall, inhaling the odd combination of fresh bread, horse manure, and ambition. You're a medieval merchant now. You'll figure this out. Probably. And if not, you could always run away and become a monk. They have wine. You blink blearily at the horizon as the market awakens like some ancient beast, slow, noisy, and not especially concerned with your feelings. The sun's barely up, but already people are yelling about eels, arguing over apples, and accusing each other of witchcraft or, worse, price gouging. You haul a splintery crate out from your stall and start laying out your goods with the enthusiasm of someone setting up a lemonade stand during a hurricane. Your offerings include several questionable fabric bundles, some hand-carved buttons that look like they've been nibbled by mice, and one exceptionally smug-looking cabbage. It's not much, but it's yours. The cobbled road beneath your feet is still slick with whatever the horses left behind, and as you crouch to retrieve a fallen spool of thread, a cart rolls by at terminal velocity. You barely jump out of the way before it flattens your foot and your dreams. The driver waves like this is perfectly normal. To be fair, it kind of is. The square is filling fast, bakers with steaming bread, blacksmiths with soot-streaked brows, and livestock traders loudly comparing their goats. A fishmonger nearby dumps a slosh of brine onto the stones, and you briefly consider pretending to faint just to be taken somewhere quieter. Maybe 2025. A customer approaches, an elderly man with eyes like raisins and a hat made of something that might once have been raccoon. He pokes your cabbage. Hard. Then he pokes you. This fresh, he croaks. You nod. He sniffs. Smells like it's seen the devil. Then he wanders off, muttering about beets and sin. So it begins. A woman arrives carrying 3 chickens and the aura of someone who never loses an argument. She eyes your thread and scoffs. 2 skeins for a goose feather, she offers. You blink. What would I do with a goose feather? She blinks back. Write Latin, obviously. You make your first trade of the day. You do not speak Latin. This is medieval bartering at its finest, half commerce, half improv theater. There's no money changing hands so far, just a swirling dance of goods, half-truths, and deeply suspicious cheese. You learn quickly. Don't call someone's wool itchy. That's considered fighting talk. Don't turn your back on children. They are tiny thieves with sticky fingers. Don't try to undercut the woman selling onions. She has a knife and a long memory. Historians still argue whether these market negotiations were more formalized or just glorified shouting matches. Based on your current experience? Definitely the latter. A bell rings in the distance. The bell tower, you think, though it might also be someone calling their pigs. In this town, it's a coin toss. Then comes your first real test, the bread tax. A baker wheels over a cart stacked high with brown loaves, each wrapped in linen and smelling like actual hope. You want one. You need one. You point. That'll be a penny, she says, plus the tax. The what? The bread tax. His lordship takes 1 loaf per dozen sold, plus a toll for flour import. It's new. She shrugs. Try to keep up. You hand over a coin with a picture of a face you don't recognize and immediately regret everything. You bite into the bread. It's dry, heavy, and tastes like ash and compromise. But it's food. You've had worse. Okay, you haven't had worse. A stray dog eyes you with understanding. You toss it a crumb. It nods solemnly and walks away like it's been burdened with ancient knowledge. As midday nears, the square reaches peak chaos. The noise is endless, hooves clopping, babies wailing, a man yelling about eel prices being the work of demons. A fiddle plays somewhere. Someone else is hawking miracle turnips. You hope that's not what you sold earlier. You try to look busy, which in this case means moving the same 3 bundles of fabric from one end of your table to the other like you're rearranging your failures. A merchant next to you, stouter, smellier, and somehow wearing 2 hats, nods toward you. You knew. You nod. Don't sell cabbage, he grunts. No one trusts cabbage. They think it talks to witches. You thank him. He spits into a bucket and resumes yelling at a pigeon. You scribble something in your ledger with your new goose feather, mostly just a doodle of a cat wearing a crown. It's unclear if anyone's actually making a profit here, or if the entire economy is held together with sheer indignation. Another merchant passes by hawking miracle ointment made from ground-up frogs and nettles. It smells like despair. You wonder if this counts as a competitor. Suddenly, a nearby goat lets out a soul-wrenching scream, and 3 children shriek in response. No one blinks. No one reacts. It's just another Tuesday. A town guard saunters by. You smile nervously. He eyes your wares and says nothing. Then he picks up a button, snorts, and drops it. You don't know whether to be insulted or relieved. Time slows. You sit on a barrel and watch the market swirl around you. There's something oddly peaceful about it, between the shouting and the raw turnip eating, there's rhythm. A pattern. A constant threat of random livestock injury, yes, but still, it feels alive. A bee lands on your bread crust. You offer it to the bee. You're bonding now. Medieval friendships are forged in silence and mutual suffering. As the sun begins to dip, you realize something unsettling, you've actually survived your first morning. Sure, your fingers are sore, your earnings are laughable, and your dignity is probably fermenting in a nearby ditch, but you're still here. Barely, the sun has shifted to a higher, more judgmental angle in the sky, and you can feel it warming the back of your neck as you stare at your stall, realizing one key truth: you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. Technically, you own this little merchant booth. Technically. In reality, it's more like you inherited a vague sense of entrepreneurial panic along with a few lumpy bolts of cloth and a pouch of mixed coins so old they might predate the alphabet. Your table is wobbly, your fabric is unidentifiable, and your price list is just the word reasonable, scrawled in the corner of a wax-stained scrap of parchment. You reach down and adjust a bundle of wool, coarse, itchy stuff that was probably harvested from a sheep who hated everyone. A customer lingers nearby, picking up a corner of the cloth like it might bite her. She sniffs. Is this local? You hesitate. What does local even mean in this context? You squint at the cloth and take a wild guess. Yes. She raises an eyebrow. Doesn't smell like Wiltshire wool. You are, at this point, learning that the medieval customer is suspicious, opinionated, and highly experienced in detecting fraudulent textiles. She walks away, unimpressed. Your cabbage wobbles slightly in a breeze. Even it seems embarrassed for you. Across the square, a man selling wooden spoons is juggling. People clap. You hate him. You try smiling at passers-by. This works exactly once, when a child smiles back and then tries to steal one of your buttons. You respond by glaring. She hisses like a cat and disappears into a crowd of nuns. Welcome to medieval retail. A bell clangs faintly in the distance, followed by a crier shouting something about ale prices and an upcoming pig race. You're not sure if that's meant to be entertainment or a spiritual allegory. Back at your stall, you rifle through your inventory again. The list is limited. 5 lengths of faded fabric. 4 hand-carved buttons, all vaguely mushroom-shaped. 2 untrustworthy-looking jars of something pickled. One cabbage. Still smug. A few pewter spoons you suspect are slightly bent on purpose. You decide to rearrange everything, again, for the third time today. This, you found, is a key part of the merchant aesthetic: busy hands, aimless hope. A man approaches. He's got a broad beard, missing teeth, and an aura of general chaos. He points to your fabric. "That'll catch fire fast," he says. You blink. "I don't plan to light it." He grins. "But it will." Then he tosses you a copper coin and takes the whole bundle without another word. You stare after him. You've just sold your first real item. Possibly to an arsonist. Still. Progress. Your confidence swells, briefly. Until another merchant, older, with suspiciously clean fingernails and the intense gaze of a man who's memorized 300 tax loopholes, strolls up. He inspects your stall without touching anything. "You new?" he says. You nod, cautiously. He grunts. "You with the Drapers Guild?" You pause. You've heard that name. It sounds important. Professional. Yes, you try. He narrows his eyes. Got your seal? You freeze. My what? Guild seal. Proof you're registered to trade in cloth. Without it, he trails off, dramatically. You suddenly understand the goose feather joke from earlier. You're not just clueless. You're illegal. Historians still argue whether every small trader had to be fully guild registered, or if some operated on the margins, unlicensed, unnoticed, and generally underpaid. Based on your experience? Let's call it a gray area. You fumble. I was just helping out. My uncle usually runs this. The man leans in, breath thick with mead and suspicion. Your uncle's name? You say the first thing that comes to mind, Gregory. He nods slowly. Never trust a Gregory. Then, to your profound relief, he walks away. You exhale so hard you nearly fall over. Crisis, barely, averted, you decide to sit for a bit on the crate you've been using as a stool. Your legs are sore, your shoes are disintegrating, and you're beginning to suspect your tunic is made from recycled potato sacks. A little girl passes and offers you a piece of apple. You accept it with genuine gratitude, then realize it's already been chewed. You thank her anyway. A bee circles the pickled jar. You swat at it gently. The cabbage, miraculously, remains untouched. You begin to wonder, what exactly are you selling? Not just in a literal sense, but existentially. Are you offering goods? Or just suffering, dressed up with a smile and a fabric sample? Then you remember something. At the edge of your stall, buried under a sackcloth, is a tiny, worn book of tally marks and notes. Flipping it open, you discover scribbled records, your uncle's, you assume, listing items sold, prices, names. It's written in a script that looks like a squirrel danced through ink, but it's a start. You spend the next few minutes trying to decode it. You find Marjorie, 2 spoons, 1 chestnut. Tom, 1 jar turnips, owes me 1/2 egg. Agnes, took bolt, did not pay, lied about baby. It's like a medieval Yelp, but with more grudges. You make a note of your 1 fabric sale to the fire enthusiast. And then you realize, this is your ledger now. Your history, in chicken scratch and turnip debt. And oddly, that makes you feel settled. Slightly. You're still hungry, still sore, and still pretty sure your cabbage has developed sentience. But you've made it through a full market cycle. You've bartered. You've sold. You've dodged a guild enforcer. You are, somehow, still in business. Just barely that you're beginning to suspect that haggling is a competitive sport in medieval England, equal parts economic transaction and psychological warfare. The sun has climbed overhead, now shining directly into your eyes like it's trying to interrogate you. Meanwhile, customers come in waves, loud, suspicious, and aggressively frugal. Your latest opponent is a leathery-faced man named Oswin, who is holding up one of your spoons like it's a diseased tooth. Bit bent, he mutters. Looks like it's already fought a stew and lost. You try a smile. That's called pre-curved. Easier for scooping. He narrows his eyes. I'll give you half a farthing. You blink. That's not even a real offer. He grunts and drops the spoon back on the table like it's personally offended him. Fine. Keep your fancy scrap metal. Then he stomps away, leaving behind a faint trail of dried mud and broken dreams. You glance at your remaining inventory and sigh. It's not the stuff you're selling that's the problem. It's the system. No fixed prices, no digital receipts, no guarantee someone won't trade you a suspicious egg and vanish into the fog. But you're learning. Sort of. A young couple approaches, he's carrying a goose under one arm like a football, she's holding a basket of root vegetables and mild contempt. They look at your cloth. You brace yourself. She speaks first, how much for this bolt? You've learned to hesitate before blurting anything. 2 pence, you say cautiously. She scoffs. 2 pence. For this? She rubs it between her fingers. It's rougher than my uncle's beard. You are not entirely sure what social protocol allows for that comparison, but here we are. The man chimes in. We'll give you a turnip and a story. You squint. What? He smiles. Best tale this side of the river. You're about to decline, but curiosity wins. You agree. And so, standing in front of your stall, the man recounts the time he tried to baptize a pig, believing it would improve the quality of its bacon. Spoiler, it didn't. The pig bit his ear and ran off with his britches. His wife still hasn't forgiven him. You laugh. Against your better judgment, you hand over the cloth. She gives you the turnip. He tips an invisible hat. They walk off, content. Somehow, you don't feel cheated. Later, a boy offers to trade a carved wooden whistle for a spoon. You're about to refuse, but then you hear him play it. It sounds like a goose in distress. You nod solemnly. Deal. You're not just a merchant now. You're part of an ancient economic dance. Goods, favors, debts, reputations, it's all swirling together in a giant, hay-scented soup. Then a voice cuts through the crowd like a sword through butter, who's selling bread without license? Everyone freezes. A town official, dressed in drab linen and eternal dissatisfaction, strides through the market, eyes scanning like a hawk with tax powers. You look down at your table and silently thank the cabbage for not being bread. The inspector marches up to a poor lad selling lumpy loaves off a cart. You got flour stamps, he barks. The boy stammers. I stamped them with a potato. That's not what that means. Turns out, in certain towns, all flour had to be purchased through a lord-approved mill, and you had to prove it with wax-sealed parchment. Historians still argue whether this was a legitimate safety concern or just a cash grab by local nobility. Either way, the inspector confiscates half the boy's bread and declares it for redistribution. Which, judging by how fast he tucks it under his arm, probably means lunch. The boy slinks away, looking crushed. You slip him a spoon when no one's watching. He nods. No words exchanged. You feel, oddly noble. The afternoon heat starts to weigh on everything. People move slower, tempers shorten, smells intensify. You become acutely aware that your shirt is now clinging to you in places you didn't know existed. Sweat, dust, and cabbage musk. It's a lifestyle. Then comes the onion woman. She slams her crate down next to yours without warning, sets up her stall in 30 seconds flat, and begins shouting, onions. Bigger than your baby's head. She's not wrong. These onions are monstrous. You offer her a polite nod. She glares. Don't think you'll steal my customers. I sell fabric. People always need onions. She's not wrong again. Still, you try to strike up conversation. Business good? She cackles. Better than cabbage. People like onions. You glance at your cabbage. It does not respond. She lowers her voice. You're new. Keep your stall neat, price low, and if a man named Ralph offers to sell you enchanted goat balm, don't. You thank her. She snorts. You are, somehow, friends now. You spend the next hour adjusting your pricing strategy. Mostly this means crossing out old prices and adding question marks. You consider writing, best offer, but realize that might just invite chaos. Again. As the sun begins its slow decline, you hear the bell toll once more. That means the bread tax collectors are on their second round. Somewhere, a donkey brays in panic. You start packing up. Not because you're done. But because the rhythm of the market demands it. There is a tempo to this life, bells, trades, arguments, laughter, turnips, and you're beginning to hear it. You tuck your coins, 3 pence, a bent halfpenny, and a mysterious token with a fish on it, into your pouch. Then you gather your spoons, fold your fabric, and say a polite goodbye to the Onion Queen. As you walk away from the square, the crowd thins. The noise fades. But in your head, the bartering still echoes. You didn't get rich today. But you survived another round. And somehow, you've even got a turnip to show for it. Also, your cabbage is still smug. You consider giving it a name. The town settles into a slower rhythm as you trudge homeward with your half-empty basket and entirely empty stomach. Your hands are sticky from handling too many things you couldn't identify, your legs ache, and the turnip in your pouch thumps with each step like it's mocking you. You could eat it, sure, but you're not yet ready to admit defeat. As you pass down the crooked alley leading to your shop home, a group of older women, clearly seasoned market veterans, stand in a tight huddle, gossiping with the intensity of a royal council. Their voices rise and fall like dramatic church chants, except instead of holy doctrine, they're discussing someone's inappropriate footwear and the mysterious new monk who apparently has hands too smooth to be celibate. One woman turns toward you, eyes narrowing. You're the cabbage seller, she says, as if it's a crime. You manage a small nod. Don't trust them, she mutters to the others. Cabbage is how the Normans started. You have absolutely no idea what this means, but she says it with conviction. You hurry past them before you're blamed for another invasion. Back at your stall, you find a scrap of parchment tucked under a button. Scrawled in terrible handwriting, meeting tonight. Guild Hall. Be there. No name, no details. You don't even know which guild it means. Could be for cloth traders. Could be for cabbage sympathizers. Still, you decide to go. Mostly because you need allies. Or at least people who know what a groat is without squinting. Evening falls. The town changes tone, less yelling, more murmurs. Lanterns flicker to life. Church bells toll vespers, and the air turns sharp and cool. You change into your best tunic, less holes, and walk toward the guild hall, trying to look like someone who belongs to something. The guild hall stands at the far end of the square, half stone, half timber, and wholly unimpressed by your presence. You walk through a heavy door and into a chamber lit by tallow candles, the air thick with wood smoke, sweat, and hot mead. Inside, about 20 people gather around a long table. Most are older men with furrowed brows and the kind of beards that suggest deep economic opinion. A few women sit along the sides, their eyes sharp, their expressions sharper. You nod, unsure where to stand. A man in a green cloak clears his throat. New face. You step forward. I'm, Gregory's nephew. Always Gregory. There's a long pause. One man squints. Gregory, who traded sheep for a boat that sank. That sounds like him. They nod. Apparently this passes as a background check. Sit, then, someone says. You do. The bench creaks ominously. The meeting begins. And by meeting, what they really mean is a 2-hour circular argument about the wool imports from Lincolnshire, a missing crate of lamp oil, and whether or not a traveling merchant named Bartle is undercutting local prices using foreign math. You try to follow, but the jargon is thick. There's talk of weft and warp, of tithes and tolls, of fleece grades and sheep temperament. Someone loudly declares, the black-faced sheep are clearly superior, and another person throws a pickle. You learn that guilds are less about cooperation and more about sanctioned squabbling. Still, there's power here, power to set prices, defend members, and gang up on anyone selling illegitimate buttons. Historians still argue whether guilds were protective organizations or thinly veiled trade mafias. Sitting here, listening to grown men debate twine durability with knife-sharp bitterness, it feels like the answer is yes. Eventually, someone suggests electing a market watcher. Everyone groans. Apparently, this is a thankless job that involves waking up early, counting turnips, and yelling at bakers who lie about their flour. You laugh. A little too loudly. They all look at you. You want the post, cabbage boy. You freeze. This is clearly a trap. Only if it comes with free bread, you mumble. They nod sagely. Spoken like a true merchant. And somehow, that seals it. You are now the market watcher. Congratulations. To be fair, it comes with a badge. Well, a wooden token with a crooked W burned into it. But it's something. After the meeting, as you're leaving, an older woman with gray braids leans in close. Watch yourself, boy. Not all trades are honest. You blink. Meaning? Meaning, she says, some folk will sell you ash and call it pepper. And some will smile while they stab your price list. You nod slowly. You're not sure what she sells, possibly prophecy, but her tone makes it clear, medieval markets aren't just about goods. They're about alliances, grudges, and knowing who you can trust when someone tries to pass off squirrel as mutton. Outside, the town is quieter. A soft breeze lifts the smell of smoke and roast meat. Someone plays a lute nearby, badly, but with heart. You walk back toward your stall with your new title, your wooden badge, and a vague sense that you're now part of something. You're still poor, still confused, and still slightly unsure if your cabbage is plotting something. But you're making progress. The town feels less alien tonight. The crooked streets familiar, the torchlight warm. You nod to a passing guard. He grunts in return. Tomorrow, you'll be back at your stall, watching, selling, surviving. But tonight, you're a merchant. A tired, underpaid, cabbage-adjacent merchant. And honestly, that's not so bad. The rooster crows like it's auditioning for the role of most obnoxious creature in Christendom. You groan, sit up, and feel every splinter of your straw mattress lodge itself somewhere between your shoulder blades. Morning light slips through the cracks of your shutter, bringing with it the sound of distant arguing and the not-so-distant smell of something burning, probably breakfast, hopefully not your roof. You strap on your slightly less dirty tunic, grab your satchel, and secure the market watcher token to your belt with a shoelace. It swings as you walk, part badge of honor, part reminder that you've agreed to wake up earlier than any sane person should. You arrive at the square just as a cart rolls in stacked high with turnips, only to hit a pothole and distribute its contents like a vegetable apocalypse. The driver curses. A small child immediately begins juggling the fallen produce. You nod. Just another morning. You begin your duties, counting vendors, noting inventory, and generally acting like you know what you're doing. You practice phrases like, per chartered custom, and, in accordance with the guild's ruling, until they roll off your tongue with convincing indifference. Then you hear it. The dull thud of boots. Heavy ones. You turn to see a reeve approaching, one of the Lord's tax officials. He's tall, wearing a brown cloak, and has a face carved from pure suspicion. Two assistants trail behind him with slates and the smug energy of unpaid interns who've just found a typo in someone else's work. He stops in front of your stall. You. Market watcher. You straighten. Yes. He gestures to your wares. Selling today. You nod, cautiously. After I finish my rounds. Then you'll pay the stallholder's levy. 2 pence and a half groat. You blink. A half groat? He smirks. For the badge. You protest, but I thought being market watcher exempted. Ah, he interrupts, you thought. Dangerous habit. You reach for your pouch and count out the coins, painfully aware that you are now trading literal food money for the privilege of doing free labor with a wooden token. As the reeve moves on to terrorize the eel vendor, you mutter under your breath, I should have joined the monastery. Behind you, someone chuckles. You turn to see the onion woman again. She's polishing a particularly large onion like it's a prized gem. They'll squeeze a penny out of your shadow, she says. He once fined me for excessive shouting. In a market. You nod grimly. Misery loves company, especially when it's sautéed with onions. You return to your duties, eyes now peeled for reeves, fee collectors, and the occasional rat uprising. You find yourself inspecting the bread vendors. One stall, in particular, stands out, stacked high with crusty round loaves, each topped with an oddly perfect crosshatch. Too perfect. Suspiciously symmetrical. You lean in. The vendor, a wide-eyed youth with flour on every available surface, greets you with the intensity of someone who knows their entire economic future depends on your next words. Bread's fresh, he says. Baked at dawn. Blessed by the friars. Stamped and sealed. You examine one loaf and notice something strange. It's stamped all right, but the seal is crooked, and worse, smudged. You tap it gently. What's this? Not the official seal. He hesitates. It's, a new one. From where? He opens his mouth. Closes it. Opens it again. From. Bishop's nephew. You sigh. Counterfeit seals were a real issue in medieval markets. Some vendors carved potatoes to mimic stamps. Others bribed monks. Historians still argue whether local clergy were complicit or just blissfully unaware, probably because they were busy trying to calculate how many angels could dance on a coin's edge. You confiscate 2 loaves and offer the vendor a choice, report to the guild or donate the rest to the poor and consider this a warning. He donates the bread. You nibble a piece, it tastes like regret and undercooked penance. Moving on, you jot down a few more observations. A blacksmith scale is clearly rigged to favor heavier weights. A fisherman is selling fresh herring that smells like it's already had a resurrection. And someone is selling genuine Roman coins that look suspiciously like carved beetroot slices. Then the real fun begins. From the edge of the market, a shout, thief. A boy darts through the crowd clutching something, a pouch, a crust, maybe someone's dignity, and chaos erupts. You run after him, awkwardly, your wooden badge flapping like a drunken bird. The chase takes you past the cheesemonger, through a curtain of drying hides, and into a cluster of goats who seem more annoyed than alarmed. You corner the boy near the well. He pants, wild-eyed, clutching a single coin. I was hungry, he wheezes. You pause. He's no older than 10. Dirt-smudged, barefoot, scared. You sigh and reach into your pouch. You take the coin from him, hand back 2 crusts of confiscated bread instead. Don't steal, you say quietly. Just ask. He stares at you. Then nods. And vanishes into the crowd. You return to your stall exhausted, mildly heroic, and down 1 loaf. The sun is dipping now, casting long shadows across the stones. Merchants begin to pack up, folding cloth, wrangling hens, and gathering coins in the worn leather pouches they guard like treasure chests. You count your own earnings. Not terrible. A few pence, 1 turnip, 3 buttons bartered back to you from a confused child, and a scribbled thank you from the onion woman, for not being an arse, mostly. Not bad for a day that began with taxes and ended with a footrace through livestock. You sit on your crate and take a long breath. The market quiets. The reeve is gone. The church bells toll again, faint, familiar. And for just a moment, the square feels peaceful. Then a distant voice shouts, "Who stole my goat?" You decide to pretend you didn't hear that. You wake up in the dark. Not the romantic, candlelit kind. The damp, inexplicably mold-scented, deeply medieval kind of dark. You blink, but the room doesn't get brighter. Then you realize it's still the middle of the night, and something is rustling. You freeze. Is it a thief? A rat? A vengeful cabbage? You lean over the edge of your straw mattress and catch the glint of 2 tiny eyes. Rat. It scurries across the floor, disappears into a hole, and you sigh. One more item to add to your list of medieval indignities: nocturnal rodent visitors. You finally drift back to sleep for a few more fitful hours until the sun scrapes through your window again like an unwanted bill collector. You rise groggily and stretch, immediately regretting it. Your shoulders crack like old floorboards. Downstairs, you find your ledger has been gnawed. Again. Apparently, rats in this town have a particular taste for questionable math and turnip ink. You head out, and, surprise, it's raining. Not a pleasant drizzle, either. This is the kind of rain that soaks you to the bone in 30 seconds and smells faintly of horse and chimney soot. You grab your cloak, which is about as waterproof as a napkin, and trudge into the square with the resigned shuffle of someone who knows wet socks are inevitable. Your stall is soggy. The cloth? Damp. The spoons? Cold and wet. The cabbage? Thriving. It seems to like the rain. You hate it even more now. The cobbles are slick, and someone has spilled a crate of leeks near the baker's booth, which makes every third person who passes by do a full body flailing slide before regaining balance and pretending it didn't happen. And then, as if scripted by an unusually cruel playwright, you spot the rats. A whole parade of them, scampering between stalls like they own the place. Which, honestly, they might. A cheese merchant screams. A fishmonger throws a mackerel. Neither action has any measurable effect. You spring into action, channeling your inner market authority. Shoo, you cry, flailing a wet sackcloth. One rat pauses, sniffs disdainfully, and carries on unbothered. The onion woman leans out from her stall and mutters, "They only leave when the bread vendor shows up. He owes them rent." You laugh. She doesn't. Despite the rats and the rain, the market slowly begins its daily crawl to life. You light a stub of tallow candle to dry your ledger pages, which promptly stick together into one solid block of mildly flammable commerce. A merchant from out of town, a short, round man with a large hat and a larger ego, sets up next to you. He's selling imports. Which, in this case, means dried fruit, colored beads, and something he calls clove water. He dabs a bit onto his wrist and waves it under your nose. You recoil. "Exotic," he says proudly. "Explosive," you reply. Turns out, clove water is a mixture of distilled alcohol and clove oil, used as both perfume and mild antiseptic. You wonder if it might also repel rats. Or people. He tries to sell you a vial for 5 pence. You offer him a button. Negotiations stall. Later, you're hunched over your ledger block, trying to chisel it back into separate pages with a spoon, when the rain intensifies. It drips through cracks in your stall roof, forming a growing puddle under your display. You panic move your cabbage to higher ground. A bolt of fabric falls into the puddle and immediately assumes the density of a wet sheep. You're wringing it out when someone walks by and mutters, "Should have used waxed linen." You nod thoughtfully. You have no idea what that is. Then comes the true insult. A man wearing actual shoes, not turnip leather bootlets like yours, strolls up, surveys your offerings, and says, "You call this a stall?" You look up, rain dripping off your nose. It's more like a tragic shelf. You blink. Is this constructive feedback? He laughs. Just advice. Raise your goods, get a wax cloth, display the fabric rolled, not folded. Oh, and your prices are tragic. You nod slowly. And you are. He sticks out a hand. Alric. I sell beeswax and belts. Fourth stall near the bell tower. You shake, cautiously. He eyes your cabbage. Is it cursed? Unclear. He grins. Keep at it, cabbage boy. And just like that, he's gone, off into the drizzle like a smug, useful ghost. You do, in fact, raise your table using a few old crates. You flip the damp fabric into an appealing-ish pile and prop the spoons up in a jar so they look intentional. It's a start. Just as you're beginning to feel semi-competent, a dog pees on your crate. You sigh. Then, as if summoned by your descent into existential sogginess, a woman in fine wool walks up. She's clearly not local. Her hands are clean. Her cloak fits. She eyes your cloth. Imported? No, you say. Rain grown. She snorts. I like that. She buys a bolt. Full price. No haggling. You stare at the coins in your palm like they might vanish. But they don't. Real money. For your stuff. In the rain. With a wet dog watching. The clouds begin to part, just a little. A beam of watery sunlight breaks through, glinting off puddles and soggy spoons. Somewhere, someone starts to hum. You lean back and smile. It's still raining. Your socks are ruined. The rats are definitely planning something. But you made a sale. And in this world of unpredictable weather, bad bread, and dubious economic policy, that counts as victory. By now, you've learned to lower your expectations for medieval meals. Significantly. It's evening, and after packing up your stall and shaking your cabbage dry, yes, it somehow made it through another day, you trudge toward the tavern with your cloak clinging to you like an old regret. Your stomach has been growling since midday, but you didn't dare stop to eat, lest you miss a potential customer or a curious rat uprising. The tavern squats at the corner of the square like a stubborn blister, two crooked stories of wattle and daub, lit from within by flickering tallow candles and the promise of questionable stew. Above the door hangs a faded sign depicting what might be a bear or a sheep or possibly a very tired dog. The name has worn off entirely. Inside, the air is thick, smoke, spilled ale, unwashed bodies, and a hint of something sweetly sour that might once have been fish. You shuffle to a bench near the hearth, trying not to look too wet or too poor. A serving girl approaches with the practiced sigh of someone who has dealt with far too many eccentric merchants this week. "Stew or nothing," she says. You nod. "I'll take the stew. It's nothing with more effort." You blink. She stares. "Just kidding. One bowl coming." As she leaves, a man in the corner starts plucking a lute. He's missing 2 strings. And possibly some coordination. The tune starts promisingly but quickly turns into a meandering dirge that sounds like it's trying to imitate a dying cow with performance anxiety. Still, no one throws anything. Yet. Your stew arrives, a brownish slop with some floating shapes you choose not to identify. You taste it. It is, technically, warm and vaguely edible. There's something chewy in it. Possibly meat. Possibly, well, you stop thinking. Across the room, a group of tradesmen laugh too loudly at a joke involving a bishop, a chicken, and a bucket of wax. You don't understand it, but you laugh anyway. It feels like the right thing to do. You overhear conversations. Snippets of a town soul. He swore he saw a ghost in the churchyard. Turned out to be a goat in a shroud. They say a nobleman's riding through next week. Inspections. Or taxes. Same difference. My cousin's wife's sister swears by eel oil for headaches. Rubs it right on the temples. Smells terrible, but she hasn't complained since. You're just starting to enjoy the warmth when someone slams a tankard on the table next to you. It's Alric, the belt and beeswax guy. His cloak is dry. Of course it is. Market watcher, he greets. You nod. Cabbage vendor. He grins. How's the trade? Wet. He snorts and takes a long drink from his cup. I saw you chase a rat off a shoe cart this morning. Noble work. You shrug modestly. All in a day's panic. The two of you swap stories. He tells you how he once traded 3 belts for a goat and regretted it instantly. You tell him about the lady who bought your cloth in the rain. He raises a brow. A lady? In this town? Hope she's not scouting for tax collectors. You hadn't considered that. Historians still argue whether small towns had regular noble inspections or if these were just rumors stirred up to keep everyone uneasy. Either way, the idea of someone showing up and demanding a full accounting of your cabbage-related income makes your spoon tremble slightly. A moment later, the tavern door slams open. Everyone tenses. You instinctively reach for your coin pouch, then realize it's already empty. Classic reflex. But it's just a group of pilgrims, muddy, damp, carrying badges and sore feet. They speak Latin like they really want people to know they speak Latin. One begins singing. The lute player takes offense. A musical duel begins. Everyone loses. You turn back to your stew. It's congealing. As you scoop the last bite, the serving girl returns. She eyes your empty bowl. Want more? You hesitate. Then she shrugs. You look like you could use meat. You nod solemnly. We all could. She laughs, then disappears into the back. A moment later, she returns, not with more stew, but with a thick heel of bread and a small wedge of something pale and suspiciously soft. Leftovers, she says. From the merchant table. You don't ask why there's a separate table for merchants. Or what kind of cheese this is. You just eat. And it is glorious. Outside, thunder grumbles faintly in the distance. You pull your damp cloak tighter. The fire crackles. Someone snores loudly from the next bench over. And for the first time in what feels like days, you feel almost comfortable. Not clean. Not dry. Certainly not wealthy. But fed, warm, and not currently being yelled at by a reeve. A man starts telling a story near the hearth, something about a haunted bridge and a cow with glowing eyes. The room listens, mugs in hand, every face bathed in flickering candlelight. It doesn't matter if the story's true. What matters is that it fills the night with something other than silence. You smile to yourself. Tomorrow, the market begins again. You'll sell cloth and spoons and, somehow, keep that cabbage alive. You'll dodge taxes, chase rats, and maybe even make another honest trade. But tonight? You lean back against the wall, full and tired, and let the lute player's latest attempt at melody drift over you like a broken lullaby. Sleep doesn't come quickly in medieval England. But when it does, it's earned. The next morning drags you awake with the subtle grace of a sack of bricks. You peel yourself off your straw mattress, still half dreaming of haunted cows and suspicious cheese, and for one beautiful moment, you forget where you are. Then your nose catches that earthy tang of soot, cabbage, and slightly wet wool, and it all comes crashing back. Welcome again to medieval England, where comfort is theoretical and you're never quite sure if your cough is seasonal or plague adjacent. Today's different, though. Quiet. Too quiet. You step outside into a still, chilled morning. There's no rooster. No cart noises. Even the onion woman's shout is conspicuously absent. You glance around, uneasy. Then it hits you. It's Sunday. That means no selling. No bartering. No shouting about eels. Just worship, walking carefully so you don't get fined for excessive industry, and enduring sermons that feel like tactical punishment. You sigh. Still, you change into your second-best tunic, the one that doesn't smell like mildew yet, and join the slow procession of townsfolk heading toward the church. It's at the square's far end, a hulking stone structure with one bell, two crooked windows, and an unmistakable draught. Inside, the pews are narrow, the candles are few, and the sermon is long. The priest begins in Latin, then switches to English when he notices three people dozing off and one peasant quietly counting sheep under his breath. Greed, the priest says, pacing the front, is the devil's coin. You shift uncomfortably. You made 4 whole pence yesterday and already spent 3. Does that count? He continues, voice echoing against damp stone. Envy is a sickness of the soul. Lust is the fire that burns the house of purity. And sloth is the bed of the devil. The bed of the devil, you think, probably has fewer fleas than yours. Then comes your personal favorite, the public shaming moment. The priest invites anyone who has sinned publicly, or is suspected of maybe thinking about sinning, to step forward. A few teenagers shuffle up. One sheepishly confesses to stealing an apple. Another mumbles about impure thoughts, and everyone else pretends not to look interested. You keep your head down. You're not sure whether selling cabbage without a license is a sin or just a terrible business decision. Then comes the part where he condemns all forms of vanity, including dyeing fabric, using foreign oils, and decorating oneself like the peacocks of Sodom. Which is rich, considering the bishop owns a golden chalice with actual garnets in it. Historians still debate whether the church's focus on moral purity had more to do with genuine concern or a useful way to keep peasants exhausted and suspicious of each other. Based on the current atmosphere? Definitely the latter. You glance around during the hymn. Some people are mouthing the words, others are just humming quietly and hoping no one notices. A child in the back is trying to eat a candle. The hymn ends. You all sit again, hardwood under sore backs. The sermon resumes. You drift in and out, catching phrases like, fire of purification, modesty of dress, and that's why dancing is forbidden. When the service finally ends, after only 4 hours, a new record, people file out into the light with the disoriented blink of prisoners emerging from solitary. You breathe in the fresh air. And immediately gag on it. Because someone nearby is burning hair. For tanning. Apparently Sunday morals don't extend to olfactory crimes. With no business to attend to, you meander. You pass children playing with sticks and pigs. One boy wears a bucket as a helmet and declares himself Sir Muttonbane. You salute him. He allows it. You wander down the side alleys and end up behind the tavern, where someone has chalked a tic-tac-toe board into a wall and no one seems to know how the game works. At some point, a stranger sits beside you on a public bench, tall, hooded, quiet. You're the new merchant, he says, more observation than question. You nod, cautious. Doing well? You hesitate. I've bartered buttons for onions. That feels like an accomplishment. He chuckles. Then you've already mastered the system. You turn to ask more, but he's already standing. Just remember, he says, it's not always about coin. Sometimes it's about who you owe. Then he's gone, vanishing into the crowd like a metaphor. That unsettlingly cryptic moment behind you, you head toward the river. On Sundays, townsfolk often come to wash clothes, feet, and occasionally their sins. You pass a woman scrubbing a tunic with a rock and shouting at it like it insulted her ancestors. You find a quieter spot and sit. The water glides past, murky and lazy. You spot a frog. You wave. It doesn't respond. You reflect, because that's what Sunday is for. Well, that and worrying about what the church meant when they said, "The devil walks among the merchants." You think about your stall, soggy fabric, bent spoons, and one resilient cabbage. You think about the onion woman, the pilgrims, the rats. You think about the lady who bought your cloth and the boy who tried to steal bread. You think about Auric's advice, raise the goods. Lower the pride. Maybe this isn't just surviving. Maybe it's becoming. Becoming a part of the place, the rhythm, the community, the dirt, the rain, and the oddly therapeutic background smell of goat. A bell rings. Not for worship this time, but for supper. You follow your nose. And tonight, if the tavern stew isn't horrifying, you might even splurge on a cup of ale. You still have 1 coin left. It feels like luxury. Or possibly a trap. But hey, you're not sinning. You're just rehydrating. It's the first day back after the Sabbath, and the market is buzzing, literally. There's a low, constant hum in the air, part human chatter, part livestock protest, and part an actual swarm of bees that seems to be circling the fish stall. You make a note to walk very carefully today and also to never, ever sell honey. As you set up your stall, you notice something unusual. A stream of unfamiliar faces moving through the town gate, sunburnt, cloaked, dusty, and carrying everything from carved staves to small bundles of relics and worn-out shoes. Pilgrims. Lots of them. Dozens, maybe more, flowing into the square in clumps, murmuring prayers and bargaining with equal zeal. Some bear the shell badge of Santiago, others the cross of Canterbury, and at least one woman seems to be wearing a hat made from woven twigs and divine mystery. A merchant to your left grunts. Brace yourself. Pilgrims mean coin. And thievery. And weird songs. You nod solemnly, like someone who already regrets today. By mid-morning, your stall is surrounded. A group of young pilgrims stops in front of your spoons. One picks one up, squints, then sniffs it. You decide not to ask why. How much, he asks. 3 farthings. He scoffs. That's more than a candle. Yes, you reply. Because this doesn't melt. He nods as if you've shared sacred wisdom and tosses you a coin. The others rummage through your fabrics, haggling over patterns, touching everything with hands sticky from travel and theological snacking. One tries to trade a relic fragment of St. Edmund's toenail for a cabbage. You decline. Politely. Possibly heretically. Still, you sell. Quite a lot, in fact. Pilgrims are hungry, tired, overly trusting, and carrying money donated by relatives hoping their spiritual voyage will also result in some affordable linen. You almost feel guilty. Almost. But then you catch one trying to walk off with a spool of thread tucked in his sleeve. Oi, you say, deadpan. He freezes. A test, he stammers. To see if you were watching. I am. He sheepishly returns it. You hand him a single button. Next time, trade. He nods, bows, and walks away like you're some kind of cloth-slinging saint. You are not. A few hours later, the pickpockets arrive. They always do. Children mostly, or very small adults with large eyes and nimble fingers. You're restocking when you feel the faintest tug on your pouch. You spin around. Empty air. You check your coins. One missing. You scan the square. Nothing. But then you see her, curly hair, smudged cheeks, a smirk that could cut glass, half vanished into a side alley. She holds your coin up like a trophy before tucking it into her tunic and vanishing. You consider pursuit. Then you don't. Instead, you smile. She was fast. Earned it, really. Besides, you've still got more sales than you've had all week. And a few extra farthings hidden in your boot. Merchant lesson, always hide coin in at least 3 locations. For if you have cabbage-based enemies. Midday arrives with heat and dust. A bard starts playing a harp near the well. It's too loud, too cheerful, and entirely too sincere. Then, from the back of the crowd, a familiar voice calls, "Merchant. My merchant." You turn and freeze. It's her. The lady from the rain. The one who bought your cloth and vanished like a wealthy fever dream. Today she's wearing a cloak of fine green wool and shoes that actually match. Unheard of. "I wondered if you'd still be here," she says. You nod, suddenly unsure what your face is doing. "I haven't left." She picks up a folded length of new cloth, runs her fingers over it, and raises a brow. "You've improved. You don't know whether to take that as a compliment or a warning." "I need enough for a surcoat," she says. "Something simple. But, with a bit of dignity." You nod, name a fair price, maybe even a bit generous. She doesn't haggle. She just smiles. Pays. Then leans in. "There's a noble procession next week. His lordship and some clerks. You'll want your stall tidy. They inspect trade licenses." Your mouth goes dry. "Thank you." She steps away. "Don't thank me yet. It could be good. Or terrible." Then she's gone again, swallowed by the crowd, her warning lingering in your ears like leftover incense. The rest of the day blurs. More pilgrims, more trades, a man who insists his chicken can predict weather, it cannot, and someone who claims your cabbage is actually a holy symbol. You sell nothing else to him, but he bows to the cabbage before leaving. Twice. The sun sinks lower. The market empties. You count your coins, more than you've seen in a single day. Enough for bread. Maybe even cheese. You tuck them away, carefully, distributing them among pouch, boot, and that one hidden pocket sewn into your cloak seam. And then you remember the warning. A noble inspection. That means ledgers. Receipts. Clean stalls. Bribes. Possibly shoe polish. You look at your stall. It is, not noble worthy. You sigh. Tomorrow, you clean. You restock. You maybe polish the cabbage. But tonight? You eat. You rest. And maybe, just maybe, you start writing your own trading license. You know. Just in case, you don't sleep much that night. Every time you close your eyes, you see cloaks, expensive ones. Silks. Fur trim. Velvet embroidered with tiny gold lions doing yoga poses. You're not sure why, but noble fashion in your dreams is particularly judgmental. When dawn finally breaks, you're already awake, hunched over your stall like a guilty squirrel. You've started Operation Make Everything Less Pathetic. The fabric gets a brush down, the spoons a wipe with a damp cloth, and even the cabbage is cleaned of yesterday's mysterious flecks. You place it dead center like some leafy mascot of legitimacy. Today, you plan to impress. Or, at the very least, avoid getting fined into bankruptcy. The first half of the morning is quiet, too quiet. A few early risers drift by, one asking if you sell lamp oil, you do not, another seeking honeyed figs, you think that's just a medieval euphemism, and one confused man who seems to believe your cabbage is a melon. Then, just before noon, trouble arrives. He stands tall, with a turban-like head wrap, leather boots that cost more than your entire wardrobe, and the look of someone who spent a lot of time in ports, and not as cargo. His hands are covered in rings. His grin is a little too wide. "A fine stall," he says, accent unplaceable but confident. "You deal in cloth?" You nod. Spices, perhaps, he asks, producing a small pouch from his belt. He opens it and tilts it toward your nose. Your sinuses immediately explode. Pepper, he says, smugly. From Alexandria. The real thing. You cough and blink through watering eyes. It smells expensive. And dangerous. He smiles. A trade? You blink. What for? He gestures at your folded wool bolts. Something humble. I like contrast. You hesitate. This feels off. Why would someone with foreign spices want a third-rate peasant cloth? Is this a setup? A trick? A prank orchestrated by cabbage spirits? But his smile doesn't waver. Come now, he says. 1 yard. For a taste. You nod, cautiously. You hand over a plain bolt of coarse wool, honestly, one you've been trying to get rid of for days. In return, he drops a pinch of pepper into a folded scrap of parchment and presses it into your hand. It's worth more than your week's trade, he whispers. Use it wisely. He leaves without another word. You're left staring at your parcel of imported spice, your mind racing with possibilities. You've heard stories. Pepper is valuable. Nobles will pay absurd prices for a sprinkle. You once heard someone compare its price to gold. Historians still debate how much spice trade influenced European economics, but one thing is certain, people love spicy food and power moves. You tuck the parchment into your pouch like it's enchanted. You feel richer already. The pepper isn't your only strange trade of the day. Later, a hunched man offers you a comb made of bone, beautifully carved, shockingly delicate. In exchange, he wants your name. You stare at him. You mean the name of the stall? No, he says. Your name. The real one. You laugh awkwardly. It's Gregory's nephew. He nods once. Fair. And hands you the comb. You don't know if it's a joke, a spell, or some obscure rural flirting. But now you own a bone comb, and possibly, your identity has been transferred to someone else. By mid-afternoon, word begins to spread, quietly, but urgently, an official is in town. Not just any official. A tax clerk. One who reports directly to the Lord. And he's walking the market with a notebook and a squint. You immediately start sweating. You straighten your wares. You fix your badge. You try to stand in a way that screams, humble but competent. You also start mumbling the 3 facts you remember from your fake ledger, just in case. When the clerk arrives at your stall, you recognize him instantly. He's about 25, thin as a quill, and wearing a surcoat so clean it reflects light. His shoes are identical, which you now know is the sign of someone with real authority. He stops. Eyes your stall. Name. You freeze. Greg, no. Gregory's nephew. He writes something down. Licensed? Yes. Guild member? Ish. He looks up. You smile weakly. It's being processed. He doesn't smile. Do you sell imported goods? Your eye twitches. You think of the pepper. No. He writes again. He picks up a spoon. Examines it. Did you make this? No. I traded for it. With whom? You blink. A child. For a rock. He writes slower now. Like he's suspicious but also kind of bored. What's your margin? Your brain breaks. On the spoon? On your goods. Profit margin. You open your mouth. Close it. Small. He sighs, snaps his notebook shut, and moves on. You collapse into your crate like a dying bard. And then, blessedly, he's gone. No fine. No arrest. No confiscation of your cabbage for moral irregularities. You survive. Again. The rest of the day is a blur of trades. You part with 1 spoon, sell 2 yards of damp cloth, and make a questionable exchange involving a cracked mirror, a jar of lard, and an IOU from someone named Agnes, possibly the one from your uncle's ledger who lied about her baby. You end with slightly more coin than you started, a pouch full of random treasures, and the deep, unshakable paranoia that someone now owns your legal name. As the sun sets, you step away from your stall and stretch. Your joints protest like overused hinges. The air cools. The onion woman walks by and grunts, "You look like you got taxed." You nod. Inside and out. She tosses you a small sack. Inside, half a bread roll. "Victory food," she says, and is gone. You sit on your crate, chew quietly, and think. About pepper. About passports made of parchment and frowns. About what it means to survive in a world where names can be traded and spoons must be justified. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. But tonight? You made it through your first inspection. And you still have your cabbage. The guild feast is not something you've been invited to so much as, gently threatened into attending. After surviving the tax clerk's inspection, barely, and probably only due to pity or confusion, a parchment had been nailed to your stall later that evening. It read: Merchants Guild Supper. Compulsory. Bring a dish or don't bother coming back. Subtle. So now you stand outside the guild hall again, this time not as a terrified observer, but as a semi-legitimate participant holding a slightly bruised cabbage under your arm and a borrowed bowl of lentils that may or may not still be warm. The cabbage is, naturally, your dish. You've named it Gregory. It feels appropriate. Inside, the hall is unrecognizable. Long trestle tables groan under the weight of bread, mutton, pottage, roasted turnips, and a centerpiece that may be a stuffed goose or a failed taxidermy project, no one's quite sure. Candles flicker along the beams, and someone strung onion braids from the rafters for ambience. The smell is overwhelming: meat, mead, garlic, unwashed cloaks, and ambition. You're directed to a seat by a man wearing 3 different brooches and a hat shaped like a pie. He calls himself Feastmaster. He does not elaborate. You squeeze between a woman who sells smoked fish and a wool trader who looks like he once fought a badger and lost. Everyone's got a tankard in hand and at least 2 strong opinions. The food begins to circulate. Stews are ladled. Pies are hacked apart with communal knives. Your lentils vanish without comment. Gregory the cabbage is accepted with more reverence than expected. He ends up as a table mascot. Someone even draws eyes on him. A toast is raised. To trade, to fortune, to tolerable neighbors. You clink mugs and take a long sip. Mead. Sweet, sharp, mildly dangerous. The wool trader beside you leans in and mutters, "We had 3 stabbings last year over shearing prices. Keep your margins tidy." You nod, slowly scooting an inch away. As the night warms up, so do the tempers. Talk turns, inevitably, to who undercut whom, who definitely sold foreign dye under a local label, and whether or not the baker's yeast is, quote, unholy. The smoked fish seller bangs her mug. That flax dealer from the south still uses child labor. Someone across the table shouts, "So do we." She blinks. "Yes, but we pay them in fish." Everyone laughs. Nervously. A guild officer, older, draped in wool and judgment, rises and clears his throat. "We gather tonight not only to feast," he says, "but to reaffirm the bonds that keep our market civil, predictable, and profitable." He pauses. "And if anyone here is found to be trading goods without seal, origin proof, or proper guild registration," his eyes sweep the room, "may they step outside now, so we can tar and feather them without staining the floor." Laughter again. You join in, shakily. "Ha, ha, oh no. Historians still argue whether medieval guilds were truly cooperative communities or exclusive economic cartels run on passive-aggressive dinners and veiled threats. You're starting to believe it was a bit of both, with emphasis on the veiled threats. The feast carries on. A bard appears. Where did he come from? Unclear. He plays a short ballad about the tragic love between a miller's daughter and a dishonest tax assessor. It ends with someone falling in a vat of ale and the audience throwing crusts in approval. Then come the games. Because what better way to celebrate professional rivalry than competitive drinking, slap contests, and an impromptu mutton stacking contest? You politely decline most of them. But then someone calls, "Let the cabbage seller speak." And just like that, it's your turn. You stand. You're not sure why. Peer pressure. Mead. The room hushes. You hold up your cup. To trade, you begin, because that sounds safe. To cloth that doesn't unravel. To spoons that don't bend. To onions big enough to be furniture. Laughter. And to the cabbage, you add, gesturing to Gregory, who now has a tiny hat someone made from a pie crust. More laughter. To making it through another day without debt, death, or getting fined for looking suspicious. Cheers erupt. Someone throws a spoon. It's not yours, thankfully. You sit down, cheeks burning, heart racing. The smoked fish woman claps you on the back. You'll last, she says. And then the fight starts. It's not dramatic at first. Just a raised voice about whose booth blocks the sun from the cheese stall. But quickly, accusations fly, price fixing, duck theft, and something about a cursed pig that was definitely not in the trade ledger. A chair goes over. A ladle is brandished. The feast master sighs, lifts a bell, and rings it once. Instant silence. Everyone freezes. Take it outside, he says. Not near the pottage. 2 men and 1 woman leave, still arguing. One of them is already rolling up sleeves. You're unsure if this is about honor or fermented goat milk. The rest of the feast resumes like nothing happened. Later, you slip out quietly. The air is cool, the stars out. The sounds of the town at rest hum softly, a dog barking in the distance, a baby crying somewhere, the faint thwack of what may or may not be a mutton-related duel behind the guild hall. You walk back to your stall. Gregory rides under your arm again, no worse for wear. The feast taught you things. That guilds are more like families than businesses. That dinner politics are just as brutal as market ones. That people will accept anything if you say it loudly while holding a tankard. You smile. You may still be Gregory's nephew. But you're also, a part of this now. The next morning feels uneasy. Not because of a hangover, though the mead from the feast definitely left your mouth tasting like pickled regret, but because something's off. You can feel it in the way people move. Slower. In the way the market sets up. Quieter. In the way the onion woman doesn't shout, just nods solemnly as she arranges her produce in straight, almost reverent rows. You ask her what's going on. Plague rumors, she says, barely above a whisper. 2 words, and suddenly the bread in your hand tastes like chalk. Plague. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. Towns that went silent in a week. Entire households locked inside and never coming out. Streets so quiet you could hear the dead breathing. Historians still argue whether medieval responses to plague were driven more by faith or fear. Judging by the expressions on people's faces this morning. Absolutely both. You go back to arranging your stall, slower now, more methodical. You shake out the cloth and notice a few customers hanging back, hesitant to touch. You lift a spoon and polish it longer than necessary. You even dust off Gregory the cabbage, who looks appropriately grim today. A woman approaches your stall, her face half covered by a linen wrap. She gestures at a length of cloth. You quote a price. She hands you coins, carefully, with gloved fingers, and walks away without a word. You frown. Not at the sale, but at the silence. That's what's bothering you. Markets are never silent. They're messy, loud, full of bargaining and swearing and the occasional goat drama. But today, it's muffled. Like the square itself is holding its breath. By midday, someone's tied a black cloth around the tavern door. You ask why. Barkeep's son. Fever last night. Gone this morning. You swallow hard. Still, the market doesn't shut down. Not yet. Life has to go on, even when death starts peeking around the corners. But the tension is thick now. People trade faster. They don't linger. No one samples cheese or fondles cloth for texture. They come, they buy, they leave. You manage 3 small sales and 2 nearly trades. One man backs out of a spoon exchange at the last second, muttering that would carry's breath. You don't know if that's scientifically valid, but it feels poetic and contagious at the same time. A friar walks past, swinging incense with the wild desperation of someone trying to fumigate the sky. He shouts about repentance and rats. Mostly rats. You take a deep breath and try to stay calm. Then you hear someone say it behind you, low and hushed. It's in the bathhouse. You turn. 2 women, whispering urgently, eyes darting like cornered cats. One nods toward the east side of the town. You know the bathhouse. You've walked past it. Never gone in. You've smelled it, which felt like enough. Today, you go. Because your curiosity has finally overpowered your self-preservation. The bathhouse is surprisingly large, long, timber walls, heavy doors, steam curling out from between the beams. Inside, it's humid, dense, and smells like boiled herbs, sweat, and panic. A man sits near the entrance, wrapped in linen. His skin is pale. His eyes look at nothing. You step back instinctively. The attendants barely glance up as they wash the floor with buckets of cloudy water. Is he? Not plague, one mutters. Just wine. But no one sounds convinced. You back out slowly, hands tucked under your cloak. You return to your stall and wipe down everything with a damp cloth, even if it's just a gesture. A ritual of denial. Later, you see a small group gathered near the well. A woman in blue is standing on the edge, shouting. God's punishment, she cries. For vanity. For sin. For imported spices. You shuffle your pepper packet deeper into your pouch and pretend to examine a spoon. The onion woman sidles up next to you. She'll calm down, she says. Or fall in. You glance at her. Do you believe it? The rumors? She shrugs. People always die. They just don't always do it so close together. Then she adds, quieter, I boiled my onions last night. Just in case. You want to ask what that would accomplish but decide it's best not to question defensive culinary practices in times of fear. As dusk falls, the market dissolves faster than usual. Stalls vanish. Tables fold. Cloaks tighten. People scurry home with full baskets and empty conversation. You pack up too, careful not to touch your face, careful to fold the cloth tighter, careful to breathe less. Even the cabbage goes into the bag tonight. The walk home is quiet. Too quiet. Then you hear it, a cough. Not yours. You freeze. It's behind you. From the shadows. You turn. A boy, maybe 9, peeks out from behind a barrel. He's pale. His lips are chapped. He clutches a turnip like it's a stuffed toy. He sniffles. Not a plague sniffle, just a child sniffle. You approach slowly. Where are your parents? He shrugs. Gone. I think. Your heart cracks a little. You pull out a strip of cloth, clean, mostly, and wrap it around his shoulders. Then you hand him your last bread heel. He devours it like it's a feast. You lead him back toward the church, where they've started housing the orphaned and the frightened. The priest at the door nods. No questions asked. Just opens the door. As you turn to leave, the boy looks back. Thanks, he mumbles. You're nice. For a cabbage person. You smile weakly. Don't tell anyone. You head home in the dark. You wash your hands with a cloth dipped in ale, your closest approximation of hygiene, and sit. Everything is still. Except the worry. It hums in your chest like a second heartbeat. Plague or no plague, the market opens again tomorrow. And you'll be there. With spoons. And fabric. And Gregory. Because that's what you do now, you wake up before dawn, not because of any rooster this time, but because you've been dreaming of coughing. Not your own, just coughing in general. Echoing. From walls. From spoons. From the cabbage. You sit up in the dark, touch your forehead, sniff cautiously, clear, so far, and start getting ready. Today isn't just any day. Today the Lord's retinue is coming for the routine inspection. That's noble speak for, prepare to be judged, fined, or possibly relocated if your shoes are ugly. Your tunic is clean. Ish. You brushed it with straw. You polished your spoons with a corner of your cloak until they nearly looked intentional. You even gave Gregory the cabbage a new leaf wrap. He looks ceremonial now, like an offering or a mascot for responsible trading. You're ready. Or so you think. By sunrise, the square is buzzing. But not like before, this is a nervous buzz. Stalls are aligned too perfectly. Merchants are wearing their best cloaks. One even has matching socks. Someone's tied herbs to their booth like they're hoping it'll double as spiritual mosquito repellent. You stand at attention behind your stall. Your hands fidget. You recite your fake ledger numbers under your breath. Twice. Then, they arrive. 5 men on horseback. 1 woman. 1 clerk on foot. The horses are immaculate. So clean they practically sparkle. Their riders? Even sparklier. The Lord isn't some crusty, ancient baron. He's surprisingly young. Trim beard. Well-fitted surcoat. A faint expression of exhaustion, like even he's tired of pretending to care about wool prices. They pass the first few stalls with quick nods. Occasionally a guard steps down to sniff a cheese wheel or poke a suspicious sausage. One merchant is fined on the spot for unlicensed goose commerce. You pretend not to look. Then they stop. At you. The clerk steps forward. Name. You exhale slowly. Gregory's nephew. He frowns, flips through a tiny ledger. Do you have a trade license? Yes, you lie. He holds out a hand. You pause. Then hand him your license, a stitched-together set of notes from your old ledger, now with a decorative wax blob that kind of looks like a seal if you squint and haven't eaten all day. He studies it. Glances at your stall. Eyes your cabbage. What's this? A symbolic produce mascot, you say, with the conviction of a man inventing nonsense as he speaks. He raises an eyebrow. The Lord himself leans in. Do you sell that? No, my lord. It watches the trade. Keeps prices honest. A pause. Then he laughs. Genuinely. Well, he says, if it keeps prices honest, perhaps we should give every merchant a cabbage. The clerk does not laugh. He circles your stall, tapping at the spoons, lifting a bolt of cloth, checking for smuggled contraband. You smile. Not too much. Just enough to seem lawful but not smug. A guard leans in. What's this fabric dyed with? Woad. Mostly. And regret. The guard blinks. Then nods. Acceptable. You can't tell if that was approval or simply emotional resignation. The woman in the retinue, maybe a noble's advisor, maybe just someone who wandered into power by dressing well, plucks one of your buttons and pockets it without comment. You choose life and say nothing. Then, just as suddenly as they arrived, they move on. No fines. No condemnations. No cabbage-related inquiries. You're left standing there, victorious and faintly damp with fear sweat. The onion woman sidles up 10 minutes later. You live. You nod. Apparently. She smirks. They find the fishmonger 3 groats for improper eel stacking. You blink. Improper, stacking. Horizontal instead of vertical. Against guild protocol. You decide you'll never sell eels. You breathe, really breathe, for the first time all day. And that's when you remember, you didn't clean your back ledger. The one stuffed under your table. With the doodles. And the pepper parcel. You dive for it. But it's gone. In its place, a note. Thanks for the spice. The cabbage watches. A friend. You look around wildly. Nothing. Just townsfolk, a few confused pigeons, and a pig chasing its own shadow. Later, as the inspection fades into a story and the nobles disappear behind the town walls, the market exhales. People laugh again. Sales resume. Someone even plays a lute. You decide to celebrate. You take your coin, honestly earned, sort of, and head to the tavern. The day's special is stew, again, but the bread is fresh, the bench is dry, and your feet finally stop aching. As you eat, Ulrich appears, tossing a small pouch onto your table. Payment, he says. For what? For not getting us all fined with that cabbage. You grin. He's working overtime now. Tell him to unionize. You laugh. The mead's warm. The sky outside has shifted to that soft gold that makes even crooked buildings look poetic. The whole square glows like a half-remembered dream. That night, you walk home slower than usual. Not because you're tired. Because, somehow, you feel like a real merchant. One who survived a noble inspection, who sold cloth and spoons and dignity, and who kept a cabbage safe in a world full of chaos. And that's saying something. The last day of the market week begins with a sunrise that feels forgiving. The light is soft, the streets are dry, and for once, your feet don't hurt before you've even stood up. Your tunic is mostly clean. Your fingers don't smell like turnips. And Gregory the cabbage? Still intact, though you suspect he's starting to go philosophical. You make your way to the square, and there's a quiet sense of relief in the air, like the town's collectively exhaling after surviving rats, taxes, nobles, and whatever that bathhouse incident actually was. You arrive at your stall, where the onion woman is already sipping something from a chipped mug that smells suspiciously like boiled socks. Good day for trade, she says. Or hiding, you reply. She nods. Same thing. Today, you decide to push your luck, you set up everything. The fabric bolts, the spoons, the buttons, the few jars of pickle left, possibly turnip-based, no one knows, and even the carved bone comb you got from the name trader. It draws attention. One man asks if it's magical. You say it depends on how oily your hair is. He buys it anyway. You even find yourself giving advice, to a younger merchant who's clearly new, sweating over his first haggle with a customer demanding free extras in exchange for moral superiority. You tell him, offer them a button. No one ever argues with a button. It works. By mid-morning, something strange happens. You're making profit. Not just scraping by. Not just surviving. You're actually ahead. You've sold nearly all your cloth. Your spoons are down to 3. Someone offered to rent Gregory for a wedding centerpiece, which you graciously declined. Even your cabbage has limits. Then the runner arrives. Small, fast, sweating like a boiled ham. Inspection follow-up, he shouts breathlessly. All traders to report earnings before sunset. You freeze mid-sale, spoon halfway into a merchant's hand. Follow-up. They're checking your books. You sprint home. There it is, the ledger. Still chaotic, still slightly sticky, but real. And thanks to the weirdly therapeutic discipline of writing fake numbers all week, it now looks official. Mostly. The ink is smudged. The columns are uneven. One page has what appears to be a drawing of a goose in a crown. But it might just work. You return to the square, documents in hand, and file in line behind other merchants muttering curses, prayers, and in one case, a full confession to an unrelated pie theft. You reach the clerk's desk. It's the same one from before, the frowning, fast-writing one with shoes too clean for mortal men. He gestures for your book. You hand it over, heart pounding. He flips through it. Page 1. Page 2. He pauses. Frowns. Then raises a brow. You brace yourself. This margin, here, he says, tapping at your drawing. That's a swan, you say weakly. Decorative. He grunts. Then, without further comment, he stamps your ledger. Stamped. Approved. You've just had your first real financial record accepted by the Lord's office. Without bribes. Without being yelled at. Without having to explain Gregory's role in your income breakdown. You leave the line in a daze, stumbling back to your stall like a man who just finished running from responsibility and found out it was walking next to him the whole time. The onion woman throws you a look. Stamped. You hold up the ledger like it's holy writ. Stamped. She nods. Well. Now they can really tax you. You laugh. But she's probably right. As the sun sets, you sell your last spoon to a woman from the next village over. You give her a small scrap of leftover cloth as a bonus. She beams. And suddenly it hits you, this is profit. Not just in coin. In rhythm. Reputation. Routine. You're no longer Gregory's nephew. You're you. The merchant. The market watcher. The guy with the spoons. The one who survived a tax inspection, a cabbage-based identity crisis, and probably a mild plague scare. You close your stall. You wrap Gregory in cloth and place him gently in your satchel. You walk through the square for the 100th time, but now it feels different. Familiar, not foreign. The cobblestones aren't just uneven. They're yours. The smells aren't just strong. They're recognizable. You can tell the difference between boiled onion and regret. That's experience. You pass the tavern. The lute player has improved. Slightly. You keep walking. Past the church, where candlelight glows through the cracks. Past the bathhouse, where someone's hammering up a new sign that reads, open, no coughing. Past the guild hall, where the feastmaster is asleep on a bench, snoring into a bag of barley. And finally, you reach your door. Inside, you light a stub of a candle. You place your ledger beside your bed, lay Gregory gently beside your boots, and stretch out on the straw with a blanket that still smells faintly of trade. You stare at the ceiling. You are sore. You are hungry. You are, oddly at peace. You whisper, just once, to the dark, I think I'm going to be okay. And sleep takes you. Wind down summary. Soft, slow pacing. Whispery cadence. The candle gutters gently. The town quiets. A breeze lifts through the shutter cracks, brushing over your face like an old friend. Outside, the square sleeps, and for the first time since you woke up in this strange, uncomfortable, cabbage-accompanied life, you rest fully. No cries in the night. No clatter of carts. Just the creak of beams, the hush of cloth against floorboards, and the slow, steady breathing of someone who's endured. Who's adapted. Who's found, in the middle of muddy shoes and skeptical customers, a kind of peace. The market will open again tomorrow. It always does. And you'll be there, ready, worn, and quietly wiser. The spoons might change. The faces might change. But the rhythm of it all will carry you forward. So for now, let the town fade. Let the warmth of the straw, the hush of your thoughts, and the quiet ticking of a life hard-earned carry you off. Into sleep. And that's something, right?